Hey guys. Today we step into a reality that most avoid, where the noise fades, the world stops pretending to care, and it's just you and the truth staring each other down. Picture yourself on a cracked city sidewalk at dawn. The street is empty, the air is sharp, and your breath curls in the cold. There's no crowd, no applause, no one texting to see if you showed up. Just the sound of your footsteps and the knowledge that no one else is coming. Nobody is coming to save you. And that's not the tragedy people make it out to be. It's your advantage. Because if you stop waiting for a rescue, you start building your own way out. That shift, from expecting to acting, is the moment you step off the sidelines and into the real game. This is where most advice stops short. It tells you to focus, but rarely shows what that looks like in a real week. It skips the raw truth. The first step is ownership. Not partial, not conditional, full. If your life isn't where you want it to be, you built it that way. And if you want something different, you'll have to build that too. Ownership is uncomfortable because it strips away excuses. You can't point to your boss, your partner, your parents, or the economy and say, "They're holding me back." You can't wait for motivation to magically show up. You have to move even when it's raining, when you're tired, when no one notices, when nothing seems to be changing. And here's a lever most people skip: the emotional fuel of why. If you don't know why you're fighting, you won't fight for long. Your why has to cut deep enough to keep you going when everything else says stop. This isn't about posting a cute quote or making a vision board. This is about burning a reason into your mind so strong it wakes you up before the alarm and keeps you moving when every muscle wants to quit. From here, it's about building anchors, small, unbreakable habits that lock into your day like the bolts holding a bridge together. Drink a glass of water before coffee. Write 3 lines in your notebook before checking your phone. Step outside for air before you sit at your desk. These aren't random routines. They're signals to your brain. We're on. And when you think it's too small to matter, remember this: a 1-degree shift in a plane's flight path changes the destination by hundreds of miles. Your daily anchors are those shifts. Done once, they mean nothing. Done every day, they change where you land. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. You just need to take it, and then another, and then another, until one day, you look back and realize you've climbed higher than you thought possible. And when that moment comes, you won't be shocked that you made it. You'll know exactly why you did. Because you showed up when it was hard, when it was boring, when no one cared, and you kept going anyway. You've taken the first step. You've accepted that no one is coming to save you, and you've claimed ownership of your future. Ownership sharpens the air around you. It makes every hour feel more real. Now, the question shifts from who will help me to what am I building today? Because from this moment forward, your life stops being an accident and becomes a construction site. Noise, dust, plans, revisions, and daily work that doesn't ask how you feel. You lay a brick, then another, then another. You don't wait for applause. You don't pause for perfect conditions. You show up, and the structure of you rises, quiet and deliberate. Strength doesn't arrive with trumpets. Strength grows like tree rings, thin, almost invisible measures of a day lived with intention. You learn to honor small wins that don't trend on anyone's feed. You feel the pull to skip, to say tomorrow, to negotiate with yourself, and you don't. That is the practice. That is how you start becoming the person whose default is action. You begin by treating each day as a unit of progress, not a vague aspiration, not a mood board, but an actual unit, a thing you can shape. Morning becomes the lever that tilts the rest of the day in your favor. You wake, and before the world claims your attention, you claim yourself. Feet to floor, breath steady. You review the 1 to 3 moves that matter most, not 20, 3. You refuse to drown in a list that flatters your ambition but sabotages your execution. You choose the few that move the needle, and you commit to finishing them. Identity clicks into place when repetition does the talking. You are not waiting to feel disciplined. You are practicing discipline until it feels like you. Say it in the present tense because you live it in the present tense. I train daily. I learn daily. I build daily. That language is not a slogan. It's a rail you hold when the stairs get steep. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, no matter how small, you deposit trust into an account that pays compound interest. The balance grows. Doubt loses its leverage. You design anchors, rituals that hold you steady when life shakes the table. An anchor can be 10 slow breaths before you touch a screen. It can be a cup of water and a 3-line journal check-in to name your priorities. It can be a brisk walk before sunrise to wake your mind and court clarity. It can be 30 minutes of deep work before you check messages, a single focused block where you protect your attention like a bodyguard at the door. These anchors do not ask your mood for permission. They ask for your presence. You refine your environment because environment wins arguments. You stage your space so the next right action is obvious. Shoes by the door. Kettle set the night before. Notes waiting open to the exact page you'll attack. You strip friction from good decisions and add friction to bad ones. The apps that steal hours disappear from the home screen. The snacks that steal energy vanish from the cupboard. The desk that used to collect stray clutter becomes a landing pad for your best work. You stop relying on willpower like it's a magic wand. You engineer the path of least resistance to point at the person you're becoming. You work with micro-commitments because small hinges swing big doors. 5 push-ups become 10. 10 pages become 20. A 15-minute focus sprint expands into 45. Because momentum feels better than distraction. You don't sneer at small, you recruit small. Once small is loyal, it brings its friends. The win isn't the size of the action. The win is the action becoming normal. You keep score, not to punish yourself, but to see yourself clearly. A simple tracker, boxes for training, learning, building, restoring. You mark them with a pen you like because tactile proof matters. Brains forget victories and fixate on misses, so you build a wall of evidence against that bias. Streaks appear, patterns emerge. You notice which hours are golden for you, which foods sharpen you, which people energize you, which places pull the best out of you. You edit your life around those truths. You learn the difference between lead indicators and lag indicators. Lead indicators are the behaviors under your control today. Minutes trained, pages studied, pitches sent, code written, calls made, distractions resisted. Lag indicators, weight, revenue, subscribers, titles, arrive later, slow and moody. You stop worshiping lag. You worship lead. You feed the causes, and the effects follow on their own schedule. When results hide, you don't panic. You double down on the inputs you can touch with your hands. You practice implementation intentions, simple, surgical if-then statements that remove decision fatigue. If it's 6:30 a.m., then I lace my shoes and start moving. If I finish lunch, then I read 10 pages. If I sit at my desk, then I silence notifications for the first 45 minutes. These are not dramatic vows. They are tiny scripts that make your day glide. When you stumble, you don't spiral. You reset to the script and resume. You embrace the dull edge of consistency. Some days sparkle, most don't. Most are ordinary and a little noisy. You work anyway. You learn to welcome the absence of fireworks, because the absence of fireworks is where real life lives. You work when the win is invisible. You work when no one texts you a trophy. You work because you said you would. And keeping that promise is how you respect yourself. Respect becomes fuel. You build a relationship with discomfort that isn't adversarial. Discomfort is not a siren, it's a bell. It rings to tell you growth is present. Your legs burn. Good. Adaptation is negotiating with your muscles. Your mind resists. Good. New pathways are under construction. Your pride stings after feedback. Good. Blind spots are shrinking. You whisper to yourself in the middle of the rep, the sprint, the draft, the call. Stay. That single word becomes a bridge you learn to cross again and again. You protect your attention like it's oxygen. You notice the small leaks, trivia pretending to be news, conversations that breed nothing, scrolling that leaves you wired and empty. You close the leaks one valve at a time. You set windows for communication, rather than living inside an open door. You teach people when you're reachable and when you're building. You teach yourself that silence is not absence. Silence is focus. The moment you become someone who can be alone with their work, uninterrupted, you become someone hard to compete with. You cultivate energy, because focus without energy is a stalled engine. You sleep like it's training. You treat food like it's strategy. You move daily, walks to reset, lifts to harden, cardio to oxygenate the thinking that decides your future. You drink water not because it's a trend, but because your brain is a thirsty organ. You keep caffeine as a tool, not a crutch. You don't chase hacks. You adopt fundamentals until they look like personality. You practice one uncomfortable conversation each week: the boundary, the proposal, the ask, the no. You learn to speak with low drama and high clarity. You stop auditioning for approval and start offering value. You find that courage expands with use. Fear doesn't vanish, but it loses veto power. The moment you stop letting fear drive, your calendar changes, your posture changes, your quality of work changes. You adopt a recovery rhythm, because durability is a competitive advantage. The plan is not go hard until you break. The plan is stay in the game long enough to become undeniable. You schedule deload days for body and brain. You plan walks, sunlight, art, laughter, blank time that lets ideas wander back like shy animals. You learn that recovery is not quitting. Recovery is investing in your next strong day. You refuse to keep poisonous score. Not who is ahead of me, but am I ahead of yesterday's me? Comparison is a thief with good posture. It looks helpful while stealing your peace. You can't build while staring sideways. You look forward and you look inward. You measure by craft and integrity, two rulers that don't bend to trends. You simplify your metrics of victory. Did you do the reps today? Did you guard your attention? Did you tell the truth to yourself? Did you honor your anchors? If yes, you won the day. Winning days stack. Stacked days change identities. Identities shape outcomes. Outcomes then reinforce identity, and the flywheel turns faster. You prepare for relapses without dramatizing them. Missed a day? You refuse to miss two. The gap narrows. The streak revives. You analyze the tripwire. Was it fatigue, friction, fear, or a fuzzy plan? You adjust one variable, not all of them. You keep the system light enough to carry and strong enough to trust. System, not will, becomes your safety net. You speak to yourself like a fierce ally, not a heckler. The voice you repeat becomes the room you live in. You build a voice that is exacting but kind, demanding but hopeful. We do hard things. We finish what we start. We recover when we slip. We return faster each time. This is not indulgence. It's performance psychology. You will not outperform a mind that treats you like an enemy. You curate your circle because proximity alters trajectory. You spend more time with builders, people who respect effort, who talk in verbs, who don't flinch at the word discipline. You learn from them quietly. You borrow their standards until they become your own. You limit access for voices that constantly drain or distract. Not out of arrogance, out of stewardship. Your future is expensive. You cannot fund it with cheap attention. You practice one more minute in the cold shower, one more paragraph when the page feels heavy, one more call after 2 rejections, one more set when the numbers are already respectable. One more is a gateway habit. It teaches your nervous system that the quitting point is not a wall, just a curtain. You push it aside and step through. Over months, your threshold for effort moves, and with it, your sense of what is possible. You make a ritual of closing the day. You don't just collapse into sleep, you land the plane. You review the 2 wins you're proud of, the one lesson you'll carry into tomorrow, the single adjustment that will make the morning smoother. You set out the shoes, prep the desk, cue the first page. Tomorrow's first decision is already made tonight. You gift your future self a head start while the world is still. Then you sleep, on purpose, like an athlete, like a leader. The dark hours sow the seeds you planted while you were awake. Cells repair, memory consolidates, willpower refills. You wake, and the work continues. Not loud, not glamorous, not dramatic, just honest, just steady, just you. Putting another brick in place, while the structure grows stronger than the storms that used to knock you down. And as your days align, you start to feel it. Less noise, more signal, less flailing, more flow, less bargaining, more doing. The person you're becoming stops feeling hypothetical. You feel it in your step, in your spine, in the way you open a door and step into a room. You don't have to announce anything. People sense it. You've been building. So today, you act, and tomorrow you act again. You choose the anchors and defend them. You keep the score that keeps you honest. You let small be sacred. You train with discomfort as your teacher. You recover like someone planning to be great for a very long time. You aim your attention like a beam and refuse to let it scatter. You become someone who can be trusted, with a schedule, with a promise, with a dream. And the beauty of it is simple. When you build like this, you don't just get stronger, you get quieter inside. The world can push and pull, and you still make your move. No declarations, no drama, just the next right brick, set with your own hands. You've built the first layers of discipline, and now you stand at a threshold where most people stall. They start strong, but somewhere between the early wins and the distant horizon, their energy fades. They confuse momentum with permanence, as if a few good days or weeks will carry them forever. But you know better. You know the climb has only just begun, and the air gets thinner from here. This is the stage where habits become identity or dissolve back into wishful thinking. The first rush of excitement is gone. The people who clapped for you in the beginning aren't watching anymore. It's quiet, and you're alone with the work. That's not a problem. That's the proof you're doing something real. You must understand this truth. Motivation is a spark, but it cannot keep the fire alive. Consistency is the wood, and the skill that separates winners from quitters is the ability to keep stacking wood when the spark is long gone. You can't rely on mood. You can't wait for feeling like it. You move because it's who you are now. And yet, this is exactly where the old version of you will start negotiating. It will whisper, "You've done enough for now. Take a break." It will point to others slowing down and tell you that's normal. It will try to convince you that you can maintain without pushing forward. But you didn't start this to stay the same. You started to win. Maintenance is not the same as growth. If you are not moving forward, you are drifting back. The antidote to drift is deliberate challenge. You can't just repeat the same effort and expect the same results forever. What once felt hard will become easy. And when it's easy, it's no longer building you. You have to raise the bar before the bar feels light. That's the rhythm. Build until it's comfortable. Then step into the uncomfortable again. This means designing phases of progressive overload, not just in training, but in every domain. If you read 10 pages a day, aim for 15. If you can run 2 miles without breaking a sweat, push for 3. If you close 1 client a week, aim for 2. Growth demands you live on the edge of your current ability, not so far that you break, but far enough that you stretch. And when you stretch, you will feel resistance. Not the romantic kind you see in movie montages, but the kind that makes you question why you started. Your mind will bargain for comfort. Your body will look for shortcuts. You will feel the pull toward easier paths. That pull is the signal you're in the right place. The fact that it's harder is not a sign to stop. It's a sign you're exactly where the transformation happens. So you treat resistance like a compass. The very thing you don't want to do is probably the thing you need to do most. That project you've been avoiding? Start there. That phone call you're dreading? Make it first. That workout you're tempted to skip? That's the one that matters. The obstacle is the work. This stage is also where your environment becomes even more important. In the beginning, you can get by on raw willpower for a while. But when the novelty wears off, willpower alone is a weak ally. You need systems that carry you through low motivation days without requiring heroic effort. This is where routines, triggers, and cues come in. Stack your habits so one automatically leads to another. Drink water, then open your notebook, lace your shoes, then step outside. Open your laptop, then close your browser tabs before starting work. The less friction between intention and action, the more consistent you will be. You also have to defend your energy with the same intensity you defend your time. Fatigue makes cowards out of disciplined people. It whispers louder than laziness. You counter it with recovery that's planned, not accidental. Sleep is no longer optional. It's a weapon. Nutrition stops being a side thought. It's part of the strategy. Movement is not punishment. It's fuel. And as you push forward, your circle will shift again. Some people can run with you in the early miles, but will fade when the pace increases. That's not cruelty. That's reality. You can still care for them, but you can't carry them. You must keep your eyes on the road ahead, not on who's falling behind. One of the most powerful tools you can adopt right now is reflection. Not self-criticism, reflection. End each day asking, what did I do that moved me forward? What slowed me down? What will I do differently tomorrow? This small ritual keeps your growth intentional instead of accidental. It stops weeks from blurring together into a fog of activity without progress. But let's be clear, reflection is useless without action. If you identify a problem, you fix it. If you see a weak point, you train it. If you notice a win, you reinforce it. Reflection without change is just mental clutter. The deeper you go into this stage, the more you'll realize that most people aren't defeated by big failures. They're defeated by slow leaks, little compromises that don't hurt immediately, but over time, erode the foundation. Skipping one session becomes skipping two. Cutting one corner becomes a habit. You must spot those leaks early and seal them without hesitation. And here's the paradox. You must push harder, but you must also learn patience. The results you're chasing don't arrive on your schedule. You can plant a seed today, water it daily, and still see nothing for weeks. That doesn't mean nothing's happening. Growth is often invisible until it's sudden. Trust the work. Trust the process. If you hold steady here, something shifts. You stop feeling like you're forcing yourself. You stop looking at the clock, waiting for the effort to be over. You start to feel like this is simply what you do. No drama, no bargaining, no endless debate in your head. You act because action is part of who you are. And that's when you become dangerous, not to others, but to the version of yourself that used to quit, the version that needed hype to start and permission to continue. You've replaced both with something stronger: commitment. From here on, it's not about whether you can keep going. It's about how far you're willing to take it, and you'll take it farther than you ever imagined. Because you've built the one thing that cannot be faked, the habit of showing up, especially when you don't feel like it. You've crossed into a zone where your actions are no longer fueled by novelty, but by something sturdier, your own discipline. Yet, this is also the stage where life will test you with distractions that wear the mask of opportunity. They won't always look like temptations. Sometimes, they'll disguise themselves as good ideas, urgent matters, or things you should do. And here's the danger. They won't pull you backward violently. They'll just quietly steer you sideways until you wake up and realize you're far from the path you intended to walk. This is why you need to master the art of ruthless focus. Not general focus, not "I'll try to pay attention," but a precise and deliberate locking onto the handful of things that actually move the needle for you. If you chase every spark, you'll never build a fire. Here's the truth that most people never grasp. The cost of distraction isn't just the minutes you lose. It's the momentum, the mental clarity, the deep work you forfeit. You can recover lost time, but you can't easily recover a broken rhythm. That's why your task now is to treat your attention like it's the rarest resource you own, because it is. And guarding that attention starts with identifying your critical few, the small set of priorities that will create the biggest impact on your goals. Everything else is noise, no matter how shiny it looks. If a task, opportunity, or request doesn't directly serve those priorities, it gets filtered out, not delayed, not maybe later, filtered out. But this isn't just about saying no. It's about saying yes with absolute conviction to what matters most. Every yes is a promise you make with your time and energy. And you can't afford to hand out promises carelessly. The stronger you protect your yes, the more valuable it becomes. And here's where the temptation creeps in. You'll feel pressure from others who don't share your vision. They'll ask you to just do this one thing, to help out for a minute, or to come along. It won't take long. But every time you give in, you teach them and yourself that your time is negotiable. From now on, it's not. Understand this. Saying no to others is often saying yes to yourself. Yes to the work that compounds. Yes to the goals that matter. Yes to the person you're building. And yes to the peace that comes from knowing you're exactly where you should be, doing exactly what you should be doing. But here's the next layer. Focus isn't just about what you cut out. It's about training your mind to stay present with what you've chosen. You can be in the right place, working on the right task, and still be mentally scattered if you haven't trained focus as a skill. This is why deep work is your ally now. Deep work means setting aside stretches of time where you're unreachable. No notifications, no tabs open, no idle switching between tasks. Just you, the work, and the clock. You start small, maybe 25 minutes, and build up to hours. You'll notice something remarkable. As your ability to sustain focus grows, the quality of your work skyrockets, and you finish tasks in less time because your mind isn't fragmented. And yet, there's another challenge: fatigue. Focus is a muscle, and muscles get tired. The solution isn't to grind endlessly until you burn out. It's to balance intense focus with deliberate recovery. Step away from the work, move your body, breathe deeply. These breaks aren't wasted time. They're the fuel that lets you come back sharper than before. This stage will also expose something uncomfortable. How often you've been using being busy as an excuse to avoid the work that matters most. True focus forces you to face your priorities head-on, without the cover of constant motion. You'll see clearly whether you've been advancing toward your goal or just spinning your wheels. When you catch yourself drifting into busyness instead of progress, pause and recalibrate. Ask yourself, if I could only work on one thing today that would move me closer to my goal, what would it be? Then do that first. And here's a deeper truth. Real focus often means boredom. Not the scrolling through your phone kind of boredom, but the monotony of staying with one task longer than feels comfortable. That's when your mind starts itching for novelty. But if you can push through that itch without breaking your attention, you've entered the zone where real breakthroughs happen. Now, this doesn't mean you'll never adjust your plan. Focus isn't stubbornness, it's alignment. If you discover a better path to your goal, you can pivot. But you pivot with purpose, not out of impatience or distraction. You must also protect your focus from emotional hijacking. One negative comment, one unexpected problem, one piece of bad news can derail hours of good work, if you let it. The skill is learning to acknowledge emotions without letting them dictate your actions. You feel it, you name it, and then you return to your work. And don't forget, focus isn't only for work. Apply it to your personal growth, your relationships, your health. When you're with someone, be with them fully. When you train, train fully. When you rest, rest fully. Half presence is the enemy of a full life. If you master this now, you become untouchable in a world addicted to distraction. While others scatter their energy across dozens of shallow tasks, you'll be moving forward with precision, stacking progress in a straight line toward your goals. So, starting today, create your fortress of focus. Identify your critical few. Build deep work blocks into your day. Eliminate noise without apology. Train your mind to hold its aim longer than feels comfortable. And when distractions come dressed as opportunities, have the courage to turn them down. Because focus isn't just a tool, it's a shield. And with it, you're not just working harder than the rest. You're working smarter, sharper, and in a way that compounds until the gap between you and them is too wide to close. The grind isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's just you at the desk. The room dim except for the pale wash of morning light creeping in through half-closed blinds. The hum of the fridge in the next room, the faint ticking of the clock. Out there, the world is already moving, full of noise and weather, changing moods, shifting winds. But in here, you're holding a compass. The compass is your direction, your true north. The weather is everything else, the opinions, the market swings, the sudden problems, the random crises that demand attention but rarely deserve it. If you live by the weather, you'll change course every time the wind does. If you live by the compass, you keep moving toward the point you've chosen, no matter what's swirling around you. Here's the thing. Most people start with a compass, but they trade it for a weather vane without realizing it. They set goals, then adjust them the second the journey feels inconvenient. They start a routine, then skip it when the mood isn't there. They take a risk, then pull back when others raise an eyebrow. And so, they drift, letting each new gust push them somewhere else. You can't afford that. You can't afford to rebuild momentum every time something shakes you. The energy it takes to restart is far greater than the energy it takes to keep going. So your job now is to lock in your direction so deeply that temporary weather barely registers. This starts with clarity so sharp it can cut through noise. You need to know not just what you want, but why it matters enough to walk toward it when the sky is clear and when it's spitting rain in your face. Your compass is powered by that why. It's the magnet that keeps the needle steady. Without it, you'll wander. But here's the test. Storms don't always look like storms. Sometimes, they come as praise, as a tempting side project, as a job offer that looks safe but pulls you away from your long game. These aren't bad things, but they can be wrong for you. And if you're not careful, they'll feel urgent enough to make you drop what you're doing. That's why you need filters. Before you change direction, run every choice through 3 questions. 1. Does this move me closer to my true north? 2. Does it align with the identity I'm building? 3. Am I saying yes out of vision or out of fear? If it doesn't pass all 3, it's weather, and weather is observed, not obeyed. This doesn't mean you ignore reality. If the terrain shifts under your feet, you adapt. But you adapt without losing the compass reading. You might take a detour around a flooded road, but you're still heading north. That's the difference between resilience and reaction. And you will need resilience, because storms will come. Some will hit suddenly, an injury, a lost client, a family crisis. Others will creep in slowly, like a leak you don't notice until the floor is soaked, a creeping doubt, a slow drop in motivation, the quiet erosion of standards. Here's where most people fall. They think they'll rise to the occasion when it matters. They believe in emergency courage, but in reality, you fall to the level of your preparation. You handle storms based on the habits you've built before they arrive. If your routines are fragile in calm weather, they will shatter in a storm. That's why you practice discipline when it's easy, so it holds when it's hard. You show up when no one's looking, so you know you can trust yourself when everyone's watching. You train under weight, so you can move easily when the load suddenly doubles. There's another enemy here, the slow pivot. You won't always be knocked off course by a sudden shove. More often, it's a 1-degree turn, a little compromise, a skipped habit, a rationalized delay. It feels harmless in the moment, but over months, it can leave you miles away from where you meant to be. That's why you need checkpoints. Every week, look back at your path. Ask yourself, am I still heading where I said I'd go? If not, realign now. Don't wait for the gap to grow. And remember that future you from earlier, the one standing at the door, waiting to see what you've built. Imagine they're watching every choice you make this week, every detour, every push forward, every stall. When the weather changes, ask yourself, will future me be glad I let this decide my course? This isn't about being unshakable. It's about being committed. You will feel the winds. You will get wet in the rain. You will feel the urge to duck for cover when the sky darkens. But you keep your feet pointed toward the compass point, and you keep walking. Because here's the truth. The storm will pass. The skies will clear. And when they do, you'll either be further along or further behind, depending on whether you let the weather choose for you. Lock in your direction. Hold the compass. Observe the weather. But don't let it drive you. Because the world will always change. But true north stays the same. You wake before the alarm again. The room is still dark, and there's a silence that makes you notice every small sound. The rustle of sheets, the faint hum of the heater. You sit up slowly, feet finding the cold floor, and for a moment, you just breathe. Somewhere in your mind, you can feel them, future you, waiting. They're not in a rush. They're leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, wearing the quiet expression of someone who's seen every outcome you could possibly create. They don't need to speak. You already know what they're here to find out. Did you move closer, or did you drift? It's a strange kind of accountability, isn't it? You can hide from other people. You can explain things away, wrap excuses in pretty words, and most will nod and accept them. But you can't lie to the person you're becoming. They've already lived with the results of every choice you're making today. They know exactly what you traded away when you picked comfort over progress, and what you gained when you did the opposite. Here's the part most people miss. Future you isn't just a vision on a poster. They're real in the sense that your brain responds to them. Studies show that when you imagine your future self vividly enough, your mind treats them more like another person than a distant version of you. And that changes how you act, because you don't want to betray them. So here's your challenge. Make that connection as vivid as possible. Give them a face, a voice, a posture. Decide where they live, what their days look like, how they carry themselves. Let them feel so real, you could bump into them in the street. The more tangible they are, the harder it becomes to abandon them for short-term comfort. This is where the compass comes back into play. Your future self is the one holding it steady. The weather is still swirling, news cycles, family drama, random setbacks, but the compass needle hasn't moved. Every time you check in with them, you realign. Think of the times you felt lost or restless. It's easy to say, I don't know what to do next. But often the truth is, you do. You just don't like the work it will take, or you're afraid it won't pay off. That's when the image of future you matters most. When you hesitate, picture them shaking their head slowly, as if to say, we talked about this. We already know what happens if you quit here. It's not guilt. They're not there to shame you. It's accountability. It's a reminder that you are literally shaping the timeline they live in, Every rep you complete, every page you write, every distraction you ignore, it all stacks up in their world. And so does every skipped session, every broken promise, every hour lost to scrolling. Now, let's make this practical. Build future you check-ins into your daily structure. Before you start your first task, ask, if I only got one step closer today, what would it be? Write it down. That's your non-negotiable. Then, at the end of the day, picture handing them the result. Here's the trap you'll face. The storm disguised as calm. It's when nothing seems urgent, and so you drift. No crisis, no deadline, just comfort. But comfort is where most compasses are lost. You don't need pressure to keep moving. You need discipline. And the easiest way to keep discipline alive is to remember that every calm day is a chance to get miles ahead of everyone who's waiting for the next storm to move them. Bring in sensory anchors here. Play the same instrumental track when you work deeply, so your brain starts to connect that sound to focus. Keep a specific pen for journaling your progress. When you hold it, you're in compass mode. Light a candle before a long writing or planning session. Its scent becomes a trigger for commitment. These seem small, but they're cues that bypass mood entirely and pull you straight into action. And when the weather inevitably shifts, when you're tired, frustrated, tempted, pause. Imagine opening the door and finding your future self standing there. The room is lit from behind them, their expression calm but firm. They don't beg you to keep going. They don't have to. You just know, and you keep moving. Because the truth is, the storms won't stop. There will always be something. Unexpected bills, critical emails, sudden opportunities that demand all your attention. The goal isn't to avoid them, it's to let them pass through without blowing you off course. That's the skill your future self is counting on. And the more you practice it, the more unshakable you become. One day, you'll look back and realize that every storm you thought might break you only trained you to steer better. And when you finally meet that future version of yourself, when you look in the mirror and see them staring back, you'll know you didn't just get lucky. You navigated. You held the compass. You built a life that wasn't at the mercy of the weather. And in that moment, every step will feel worth it. It doesn't happen in one big crash. That's the dangerous part. When people imagine losing their way, they think of some dramatic collapse, a single moment where everything falls apart. But most of the time, it's quieter than that. It's missing one workout, then two. Skipping a meeting with yourself to review goals just this week. Telling yourself you'll get back on track after the holidays. Ignoring the compass isn't a one-time mistake. It's erosion. And erosion is silent until the cliff gives way. Picture this. You're walking along a coast. The air is cool, the waves are distant, and the ground under your feet feels solid. You don't notice the slow pull of the tide washing away the sand beneath. Step after step, you're sure you're safe, until one morning you wake up and realize the path you were on has disappeared. And now you're standing at the edge, staring down at the rocks. That's what happens when you live without checking the compass. You don't feel the drift at first. But time passes whether you notice it or not. And the gap between where you are and where you said you'd be grows wider. Until it's not a step, it's a chasm. The most dangerous thing about drifting is that it feels harmless while it's happening. There's no alarm, no bright red warning light, just a comfortable numbness. You get busy with other things, small fires that feel important, short-term wins that keep you distracted. You tell yourself it's temporary, and all the while, the current is pulling you off course. Here's the harsh truth. If you let the weather steer for too long, your compass stops feeling relevant. You start believing that direction doesn't matter anymore, only survival. And when you think that way, you're no longer the driver of your life. You're cargo. This is where future you becomes essential again. Imagine them standing across a widening river, calling out, but their voice is getting harder to hear. You want to swim toward them, but every day you wait, the current gets stronger. The further you drift, the harder it is to return. That's why urgency is everything. Not panic, urgency. Panic scrambles you. Urgency focuses you. It's the sharp awareness that today's decisions are either moving you closer to the life you want or locking you deeper into the life you don't. So how do you stop the drift? You start by being brutally honest about where you are right now. Not where you planned to be, not where you hope to be. If you've been avoiding the compass, pull it out today. Take a reading. Face the number. Yes, it might hurt to see how far you've gone off course, but the pain of awareness is nothing compared to the pain of regret. Then, shorten the gap. Don't set a goal of leaping back to where you should be in one motion. That's overwhelming. Instead, pick one move that realigns you with your direction. One step. Maybe it's blocking an hour tonight to work on the thing you've been avoiding. Maybe it's saying no to something that keeps stealing your focus. The first move is the hardest, but it's also the one that breaks the spell of drift. And here's a truth most people won't tell you. The longer you've been off course, the more resistance you'll face when you try to come back. It's not just external obstacles, it's your own mind. You've built habits around the drift, and they'll fight to keep you in the comfort of later. That's why you need something stronger than motivation. You need a standard. Motivation fades the second the weather turns. A standard is non-negotiable. It doesn't care if it's raining, if you're tired, if you feel like it. It's simply what you do. Hold that standard like your life depends on it, because in a way, it does. Not your physical survival, but the survival of the version of you that matters. The one holding the compass. The one you've been chasing since we started this journey. And when you feel the pull of the drift again, because you will, don't wait for it to carry you far. Notice it early. Correct quickly. You can't stop the tide from moving, but you can adjust your steps before the ground disappears beneath you. Because here's the real cost of ignoring the compass too long. One day, you wake up in a place you never meant to be. Living a life you don't recognize, with a future self you barely know. And by then, the hardest part isn't getting back. It's realizing how much time you traded away before you even tried. Don't let it get that far. Keep the compass close. Watch the weather, but don't live by it. And if you've drifted, start walking back today. The change sneaks up on you. For months, it felt like all you did was fight, against the wind, against distractions, against that constant temptation to just let the weather carry you somewhere easier. The compass felt heavy in your hand, and sometimes you questioned whether the point you'd chosen was even worth it. But one day, you realize you're moving differently. It's not a grand moment with fireworks or an audience cheering. It's quieter than that. You sit down to work, and instead of wrestling yourself into focus, you're already there. The hesitation is gone. The self-negotiation is gone. Your hands move before your doubts have a chance to speak. That's the first payoff of holding the compass steady. You stop burning energy on the decision to show up. Showing up becomes the default. Momentum has its own gravity. Once you've stayed the course long enough, it starts pulling you forward. You no longer rely on bursts of motivation. You're powered by something steadier. And that steadiness compounds. Think about what that means in your day-to-day. The project that used to intimidate you, now it's just Tuesday's work. The habit that felt impossible to maintain, now it's strange to imagine a day without it. The storm that used to knock you flat, now it's just background noise. You adjust, you keep moving, and here's the part you might not notice right away. Other people start to feel it too. They see you moving with a kind of quiet certainty, and they can't help but respond. Some will be inspired, some will be unsettled, because when you're locked onto your true north, you hold up a mirror to those who've been drifting, and not everyone likes what they see. Future you notices, though. They've been standing at that invisible finish line, watching your steps get sharper, more deliberate. The gap between you and them is closing, and their expression changes, from patience to pride. They know you've passed the point where you can be easily pulled away. This is where the compass versus weather metaphor evolves. In the early days, you were bracing yourself against storms, white-knuckling the compass just to keep from spinning. Now, you're steering into the wind when it works in your favor. You're reading the patterns, timing your moves. The weather hasn't stopped changing, but you've stopped fearing it. That's the second payoff. Control. Not control over everything, but over yourself, over your choices, your direction, your response to what happens around you. That control is a kind of freedom most people never feel. And here's something else. When you live this way long enough, opportunities start appearing that were invisible before. Not because they weren't there, but because you weren't in position to see them. A collaboration offer that aligns perfectly with your long-term vision. A skill you've been quietly sharpening that suddenly becomes rare and valuable. A door that seemed sealed starts to crack open because you've been walking toward it steadily for so long that you're now standing right in front of it. It feels almost like luck, but it's not. It's positioning. The same way a ship that stays on course eventually reaches a current that carries it faster. You've reached a place where effort and opportunity finally meet. This is the point in your journey where it's tempting to relax, to think, I've earned a break. I can let the weather steer for a while. That's the trap, because the momentum you've built is precious and fragile. It's easier to keep moving than to start again from zero. So instead of coasting, you level up your standards. The actions that got you here are no longer your ceiling. They're your floor. You raise the bar, not because you're dissatisfied, but because you're capable of more now. And here's the final, deepest payoff. You've rewritten who you are. You're no longer someone who tries to stay on course. You're someone who does. Your identity has fused with your compass. And when identity shifts, behavior follows without constant effort. Future you, they're not just at the finish line anymore. They're walking beside you. The distance between you has vanished because you've become them. And the wild part is, there's a new future you waiting even further ahead now, holding a compass aimed at a point you can't fully see yet. That's how growth works. The goal isn't just to reach one destination, it's to keep finding new ones. And the skills you've built, clarity, consistency, resilience, make each next journey faster and more fulfilling. The weather will keep changing, the winds will shift. But now, You move with a quiet confidence that no forecast can shake. You know where you're going, and you know exactly how to get there. The danger after a victory isn't failure, it's comfort. You've fought through storms, ignored the pull of the drift, held the compass steady, and now you're standing somewhere you once only imagined. The view is better here. The air is cleaner. You're stronger than you've ever been. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. Because success has a way of disguising the drift. When you're at the bottom, every move forward feels urgent. You can't afford to waste time. But once you've climbed higher, the urgency fades. You tell yourself you've earned the right to slow down, to relax your grip on the compass. That's how the slide begins. Not with a crash, but with a shrug. The truth is, you're most vulnerable right after you've proven yourself. The habits that carried you here can be replaced by habits of maintenance instead of growth. You stop pushing the limits and start circling the same territory, thinking you're still progressing just because you're moving. But movement isn't progress if it's not aimed at your true north. This is where many people lose their edge. They start defending their current position instead of expanding it. They cling to what they've built, afraid that stretching further might cost them some of their hard-earned comfort. And without realizing it, they begin trading the thrill of growth for the safety of preservation. Future, you can see this shift instantly. They've seen what happens when you stop evolving. Their face hardens, not out of anger, but out of warning, because they know that every time you choose comfort over challenge, you start drifting again. And here's the twist. When you drift from the top, you fall faster. The storms you once handled with ease can knock you further, because you're no longer fighting with the same sharpness. Your reflexes dull. Your hunger fades. The compass doesn't vanish. It just feels less urgent to check. And that's when the weather, with all its subtle pulls, starts steering again. So how do you stop this from happening? You raise the floor, not just the ceiling. That means the actions you once considered above and beyond become your new baseline. If you used to train 3 days a week, now it's 5. If you used to read a book a month, now it's 2. If you once had 1 major project on your plate, now you manage 2 without compromising quality. Raising your floor forces you to keep climbing, even when the initial fire has cooled. It's how you keep momentum alive long after most people have stalled. The second safeguard is to set the next compass point before you arrive at the current one. Too many people wait until they get there to decide what's next. And in that gap, drift creeps in. Instead, always have your next destination ready, even if it's just a rough outline. The moment you reach one milestone, your energy pivots forward. And don't forget, the storms are still out there. Just because you've weathered them before doesn't mean they can't catch you off guard now. The difference is, you have experience on your side. You've seen how fast the drift can happen. You know how dangerous it is to let the weather steer. If you've been feeling that creeping comfort lately, if your days are smooth, but not challenging, check the compass. Be honest. Are you still moving toward the version of you that's further ahead? Or are you orbiting the version you've already become? Because here's the reality. The comfort zone doesn't stay comfortable forever. Without new challenges, it starts to shrink. What once felt like a well-earned home base becomes a smaller and smaller circle, until you feel trapped in the very place you once celebrated reaching. Future you doesn't want you trapped. They want you building again. They want you testing limits, chasing skills you don't yet have, stepping into arenas where you're not the most experienced person in the room. That's how you keep the compass alive, not as a relic of the climb you already made, but as the guide for the climb you're making now. The work isn't over. It never will be. And that's not a burden. It's the point. You didn't fight through storms and drift just to stop here. You did it to prove you could keep going, no matter how high you've already climbed. So raise the floor, set the next point, and keep moving before the weather notices you've slowed. It always comes. The day when the weather doesn't just shift, it roars. When everything you've built, every ounce of momentum, every standard you've set, is dragged into a single, brutal test. You don't get a warning. The storm doesn't send a polite notice before it arrives. One moment, you're moving forward with clarity, the compass steady in your hand. The next, the sky splits open. This is the moment people talk about in hindsight. The fork in the road, where they either doubled down on their path or lost it completely. The test isn't about the storm itself. It's about who you are when you're in it. The details change for everyone. For you, maybe it's a business deal you've been working on for months, suddenly collapsing. Maybe it's a personal betrayal that knocks the wind out of you. Maybe it's your own body failing you at the worst possible time. Whatever form it takes, it has one purpose: to ask a question. Was your discipline real, or was it just comfort in disguise? Here's the thing about this moment. It strips away the illusion that success makes you safe. It doesn't matter how high you've climbed, how far you've come. In this storm, you are back at the start in one sense, alone with the decision to keep going or turn back. Future you is watching more closely than ever. They're not just at a finish line now. They're standing in the middle of the storm with you, holding their own compass. They know that if you pass this test, you'll never be the same. And they also know that if you fail it, the gap between you could open wider than ever. When the stakes are this high, old temptations resurface. The drift whispers louder. What if you just stop here? What if you let this one go? You've done enough. The weather tempts you with escape routes, paths that lead away from the storm's center, but also away from your destination. And here's the brutal truth. These make or break moments are where most people break. Not because they're weak, but because they've mistaken past victories for immunity. They thought the storm wouldn't come for them again. But storms are the toll you pay for the life you want. So what do you do in this moment? You remember. Not the easy days, the hard ones. The early mornings when you showed up with nothing but willpower. The nights you kept working while everyone else had gone home. The countless times you held the compass steady when no one was watching. You remind yourself that this isn't the first time you've been tested. It's just the highest stakes yet. And then you act. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, but deliberately. You make the call, send the message, take the step, whatever keeps you moving toward your true north. Even as the wind tries to spin you around, you don't wait for the storm to pass before deciding. You decide inside the storm. That's the difference. Because here's what happens when you do. The storm doesn't stop, but it loses its power over you. The weather can still batter you, but it can't steer you. And when the sky finally clears, you find yourself not just still on course, but further along than you would have been without it. That's the paradox. The highest stakes moments are also the biggest accelerators if you handle them right. They forge you into someone who doesn't just survive storms, but uses them. Future you knows this. And when they see you emerge from the chaos, compass still in hand, they don't just smile, they step closer, because you've proven you can be trusted with even greater challenges ahead. This is the price of growth and the reward. And when the next storm comes, because it will, you won't fear it. You'll recognize it for what it is, another chance to prove that your course isn't negotiable. You've come through the storm, not untouched. No one walks through a hurricane without feeling the weight of it, but intact. And more than that, sharpened. The sky is clear now, but something's different. You're not standing where you were when the storm hit. You've been carried forward, not by luck, but by your own refusal to let go of the compass. This is the moment most people misunderstand. They think the victory is just surviving. But you didn't fight through all that to simply arrive here breathing. You fought to move forward, and now, forward is the only acceptable direction. The storm tested your foundation. Now it's time to build higher, faster, stronger. You have a new kind of momentum now. Before, your progress was steady. It was discipline and consistency, important, but measured. After a make-or-break trial, that discipline is supercharged with something rarer, conviction. You've seen yourself in the fire, and you know you can handle it. That knowledge changes how you move. You no longer hesitate when an opportunity appears. You no longer waste days second-guessing. You strike faster, decide faster, recover faster. It's like upgrading from a ship powered by oars to one with full sails catching a perfect wind. The same compass is guiding you, but now the speed is different. And here's the critical part. If you don't use this acceleration, it fades. Post-victory momentum is like heat after a workout. It's strongest right after the effort, but it cools quickly if you stand still. So you press the advantage. You take on the projects you've been putting off because they felt too risky. You set a new standard for what enough looks like in your day. You leverage the credibility you've just earned to open doors that were closed before. The weather still shifts, but now you read it differently. You're not just reacting to it, you're anticipating it. You can spot the small signs of drift before they become dangerous. You can see where the next storm might form and prepare your sails in advance. Future you is moving faster too. They're not waiting as far ahead anymore. They're keeping pace just a few steps in front, pulling you into a new pace you didn't think you could sustain. This is also the point where you start attracting new kinds of people. The ones who move at this speed recognize it in you instantly. They see the way you operate, and they want to connect, collaborate, create. And this isn't about networking for its own sake. It's about building an environment where high standards are normal. Because here's the truth. If you want to keep expanding, you can't surround yourself with people who are satisfied standing still. You need people who carry their own compasses, who've survived their own storms, who are hungry for their own future selves. Together, you move faster than you could alone, but speed without direction is just chaos. That's why the compass still matters as much as it did on day one. In fact, at high speed, it matters more, because a small drift now can send you miles off course before you notice. So you keep checking, not out of fear, but out of respect for how far you can go if you stay true. The irony is, the faster you move, the calmer you feel inside. It's not frantic motion, it's flow. You're not scrambling to catch up anymore. You're riding the rhythm you've built, making adjustments without panic. And the more you live like this, the more your identity cements. You stop thinking of yourself as someone trying to become the person you want to be. You are that person, and that person is still climbing. Future you is already charting the next leap, not just a step, not just a climb, but a full-scale launch into territory you've never touched. And they know you're ready, because you've proven that storms don't stop you. Comfort doesn't dull you, and speed doesn't throw you off course. This is where expansion becomes your default. Not a special season, not a temporary push, but a permanent setting. The weather can do what it wants. You're moving too fast for drift to catch you now. You've recalibrated. You've kept your edge when the temptation to coast was everywhere. Now, this is the stage where you have to generate your own momentum, not because you've run out, but because the climb is about to get vertical again. In the earlier phases, momentum came from urgency. You were fighting to escape something, mediocrity, old habits, the weight of being overlooked. Now, the push is different. You're not escaping anymore. You're building something higher than anything you've stood on before. And that means momentum isn't just fuel, it's survival. This is where you stop waiting for the perfect conditions and start creating them. Waiting is a luxury. Here, you manufacture movement even when the wind's against you. You build energy when most people would be catching their breath. Think about how a cyclist attacks a steep hill. They don't slow down at the bottom. They lean forward, push harder, shift their weight so every bit of strength translates into forward motion. Because if you stall halfway up, getting going again is 10 times harder. That's you right now. You've already faced the storms, but now you've got to keep the wheels turning through pure will and deliberate action. The danger at this stage is not the lack of skill or knowledge. You have both. The danger is hesitation. Every second you spend thinking about whether to move is a second you could have been moving. Momentum doesn't ask if you're ready. It rewards whoever acts first and adjusts along the way. This is also the stage to amplify your output, not by burning yourself out, but by working in compressed, high-intensity bursts that break through plateaus. You lock in 90 minutes of absolute focus and produce more than most people do in a day. You remove every tiny friction that slows you down. You'll notice something strange here. The more you move, the more opportunities appear. Calls you weren't expecting. People reaching out. Chances that seemed to come out of nowhere. They weren't nowhere. They were waiting for proof that you're in motion. Most people think opportunity comes first and momentum follows. It's the other way around. You move first. You create a current so strong that the right things have no choice but to find you. And here's the part that will set you apart from almost everyone else. You keep moving even when you've already won today's battle. Momentum is about stacking small wins until they turn into inevitabilities. It's about not giving the universe a chance to slow you down. When the voices of doubt try to creep back in, and they will, you drown them out with action. Not busy work, not checking the boxes. Strategic, high-leverage moves that punch holes in the wall between you and your next level. You'll see people around you taking breaks, celebrating early, easing off the gas. Let them. You're not running their race. You're running your own. And you know that the gap you create now is the one they'll never be able to close. And when you hit the top of this climb, when you've kept your pace, protected your rhythm, and multiplied your output, you'll look back and realize that momentum wasn't just a phase of the journey. It was the journey. Because once you learn to create it on command, you're never stuck again. This is it. The final surge. Every moment before now has been building toward this closing stretch, where all the work, the scars, the lessons, and the grit have to come together in one relentless push. This isn't just about finishing strong. It's about finishing in a way that makes everything leading up to it impossible to ignore. In the beginning, your fuel came from frustration, from the hunger to escape the version of yourself that was stuck, uncertain, and unheard. Midway, you built resilience. You learned to stand when everything in you wanted to sit down. You fortified your mind, sharpened your focus, and mastered the art of momentum. Now, the mission changes. This isn't about avoiding failure anymore. It's about claiming your place without apology. Here's the thing about this final stretch. It's not physically the hardest. You've carried heavier loads before. What makes it difficult is that you know the end is near. And when your brain senses the finish line, it starts whispering, "You've done enough." But enough is not what you came here for. This is where you train yourself to go past the point where others stop. You double down when most people are winding down. You create a last impression so strong that it overshadows every stumble, every slow day, every doubt you faced along the way. Think about a sprinter in the last 50 meters of a race. Their body is screaming, their lungs are on fire, but the great ones find another gear, not because they're fresh, but because they've decided that the last image the world sees of them will be one of power, not exhaustion. You have that same choice right now. This stage is about leaving nothing in the tank. Every conversation, every move, every decision in this phase carries the weight of finality. You're not coasting into the finish. You're charging into it so that when you cross, you're not just relieved it's over. You're proud of how you did it. There's also something else at play here. Legacy. How you finish writes the story people will tell about you. It's what sticks in their mind. A weak ending can make them forget the brilliance that came before. A strong ending can make them forget the struggles entirely. That's why you push now. That's why you ignore the fatigue and pour the last of yourself into this moment. Because when it's done, you won't be able to go back and change it. And when you finally break through that invisible tape at the end, when the fight is over and you're standing there with nothing left to give, you'll understand something the early version of you never could. Winning isn't just about crossing the line. It's about crossing it in a way that proves you could have kept going if you had to. That's the kind of finish that doesn't just end a chapter. It begins a new one. Take a breath. Let the noise fade. You've been moving at full tilt for so long that slowing down feels strange, almost wrong. But right now, it's not weakness. It's wisdom. Look back, not with regret, but with recognition. Every hill you climbed, every wall you hit, every moment you almost quit. They weren't detours. They were the shaping forces that built the person standing here now. You've learned that strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's the quiet choice to keep going when no one's watching. You've learned that focus isn't about locking the world out. It's about letting the right things in. And you've learned that momentum is something you can create, even in the dark, even when nothing around you is moving. The battles aren't over. They never will be. But you're not the same fighter who started this climb. You've built a mind that doesn't break under pressure, a will that doesn't fade when comfort calls, and a standard that doesn't bend for convenience. And now, you carry something more powerful than motivation: certainty. The certainty that you can face the next fall, the next storm, the next test, and rise again. So rest for a moment, not because you're done, but because you're ready. The world is still moving, and soon you'll move with it. Faster, stronger, clearer than before. Remember this: nobody is coming to save you, but you don't need them to. You've built everything you were waiting for. And the next time the climb feels impossible, you'll smile, because you've been here before, and you know exactly how to win.